Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Todd Genatasio, co-founder and CMO of Zeotag, and I have with me Shaina Weisinger. Is that right? I've been saying it.
Weisinger. It's a hard G.
Weisinger. Damn it! All right,
That's
okay.
okay.
Well, because I got Genatasio, I have the soft G,
I
so
don't
I
even
was,
try your name. I won't even attempt it. So you're good. At least you gave it a whirl.
yeah. And she's from repurposehouse.com, and both of us are running remote companies, and we have been before this whole crisis thing. My team is only a handful of people, and we're only a few months old. Shayna is really the expert here, so I wanted to get her on to share her insights and expertise. I have here, over the last 18 months, they built a team fully remote of 23 employees full time with less than 7% turnover, which I'm told is extraordinarily incredible. So, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
But as everybody is kind of bum rushed into working from home and managing remote teams, can you talk a little bit about what your team looks like so we can give some context to what the operations are, and then maybe go into like how you guys run the business that way?
Yeah, so our team is obviously over time it became this way, but we have nice pods and tiered structures, actual teams within teams, things like that. So just to give kind of some context, what we do is repurpose content for social media. So we have physical people who are actually working on content, creating graphics, creating, like, helping edit video, captions, things like that. So we have a lot of, like worker bees, if you will, we call them content hackers. And initially when we first started, it was like we had one person in the Philippines doing all of this stuff, and we would be up in the middle of the night freaking out because are they working? Are they not working? We don't, what are they delivering? So we knew pretty quickly we needed to figure out some really great structures so that, we were multiple steps away from having to worry about that base level stuff. And I mean, to be completely transparent, I took massive pages out of Russ Perry's Design Pickle book. He's a friend of mine. So I got a chance to personally one-on-one via coffee pick his brain on how he formed teams and hiring. Obviously, like, we do similar things, but our stuff is different than his. So our teams probably are different than his. But so we have like a bunch of content hackers. We have, I think it's 4 to 5 in each pod. And then each team has their own team lead. We have one team that is all training. So the team lead there is actually our training manager. So anytime somebody gets hired in, they are on that team automatically. So she has a very special process that she works with them to get them up to speed and to make sure that they're like golden and rocking out before they move on to a team that's not training. Then we have a quality control team. Actually, it just turned into a team. Originally, it was a quality control manager, and then we needed to upgrade he needed somebody to help him. So we have a quality control team as well. And then we have a template design team. So, and initially that was one person. And then that one person turned into 2 people. And now that team's building, right? So we just realized what we needed and how we needed to create different elements, and just started building kind of from scratch, trying to figure out what the best way to do it was. But I'll tell you what, from the beginning, it was a learning curve. And it was, even with the advice that I got from Russ, like, we had to learn a lot on our own, just, how to train people, how to manage them, how to consistently be in contact, especially when they're in the Philippines and they're on the opposite time schedule, without losing your mind and, remaining married. So it was like, it's been a journey. And honestly, like, we're always evolving and learning how the best ways to do things. But if I can offer any insight and help for people who are just now going through this or are starting to build teams, and I know in unfortunate circumstances, some people may, not be able to keep their full-time US based employees and they have to hire in the Philippines or India or other locations. Like, we've come up with some pretty not foolproof, nothing, 7%, right? So we're like 93% good on hiring people who are long-term. I mean, we're talking people who've been with us for over a year. And for a lot of people who hire remote, that's not generally the case. So,
yeah. And, when you talk about the time difference too, and so my team is a handful of people in the US, and then my partner, our CTO, his company's based in Colombia. So I think they're an hour off, but we're all primarily communicating on the same time zone-ish, right? But one of the things that I prefer and love about being part of a remote community, and my agency is the same way, is kind of asynchronous communication, right? Like, I can send messages in Slack or email or whatever. We're trying to keep everything in Slack. Actually, for Zeotag, we use something called Discord, which is similar, but where when you need to ask questions and jump in, it could potentially be a live conversation, but also at the same time, you don't need to always be on or on the same page where you can be exchanging messages on and off throughout the day. And so
Right.
how do you manage that communication being completely opposite time zones? Like what kind of tools are you using for remote communication, and what's kind of like your protocols for communication?
Yeah, so we use Teamwork Chat. We were in Teamwork for projects as well, and now we just use it on like the higher, like the C-level team. We just utilize that. The team doesn't use it anymore, but we do use Teamwork Chat. It's like a Slack. It's the same kind of thing, right? We have different channels for like template design. We have different channels for quality control, things like that. There's certain things that I've just eliminated myself from because I'm like, I don't need to be dinged all day long, right? But I mean, I think a lot of it was setting the expectation with our clients too, because we know that we wanted our team to work 8 to 5 their own time zone, Monday through Friday. We didn't want it to be like, you guys have to be up in the middle of the night because we need you to communicate with us. So we've gotten pretty good at just making sure that we have very specific standards and guidelines on how people have to communicate. Like they get on, everybody's online at 8 o'clock. They're all pinging their team lead. We know that within the first half hour they're working, which is 5 o'clock our time, we're going to start getting responses to all of our questions. We do have one chat that's called urgent. So they know if they need to get a hold of us in the middle of the night, they can throw something out there. And ultimately, like what's really that urgent at 2 o'clock in the morning, my time, with content for social media. But we know we need to get to it as soon as we can, right? And most of the time, those things come up pretty early in the evening because they're going through tickets and they're seeing issues that are popping up. But it's just what's been really great is they know that within the first couple of hours, if it's something they really, really need, they can use that channel, and we will be super responsive. We also know that they have taken it upon themselves to go through all of the tickets and recognize any issues that they may run into early enough so that we can still kind of overlap a little bit if we have to. But outside of that, it's really just truly, it was frustrating at first because I was like, I have these questions, I don't have answers, I can't respond to clients fast enough. But once we got in a flow and we started to set that expectation with clients, like what the response time is, we can do everything we can do, but we can also be like, hey, listen, we don't have real answers to this because your content hacker who you have been working with consistently, like there's a relationship there. We need to get the info from them. So we will circle back by tomorrow. It's just being as transparent and open with people as you can. You'll be surprised at how understanding they can become whenever everything's on fire, like at all times this day and age. And it's just kind of taking a step back and exhaling. Truthfully, it's been really good for my psyche because I'm kind of an intense human being. So to have to be like, I can't give you an answer right this second, but we're going to get to the bottom of it and we'll circle back. Truthfully, that can be helpful sometimes because your knee-jerk reaction to something a lot of the times is very different than once you've had some time to marinate on it and come up with a positive solution. So I think it's really actually played to our benefit, really, the time difference.
Yeah. And I think, it's the difference between reacting and responding.
Right. Absolutely.
And you want to be able to respond, not just react. And I think, and that's why I like the asynchronous communication channels, because you don't have to just react and say something, but like rather you have permission almost to take it in and figure out what the solutions would be. So we talked about, we're kind of talking about group chat channels and things like that. But for a lot of companies that are making this jump transition, they're probably all on email, right? And so
it's a nightmare. I just got an anxiety for it.
Right, like they're probably used to communicating via email. And my suggestion would definitely be to jump off, get your teams off email, right? You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because we just hired a new person who's US based and he's used to communicating via email. So he keeps emailing us, and Sarah, my ops director, she's like, get off of email, get into chat. Like she's like trying to drive the point home because we're both like, we can't communicate that way. It's not organized and our brains have shifted. And I was guilty of it. You just have to force it. It's going to be super frustrating at first, but everybody will benefit so much better from a chat platform.
Yeah. And so, you kind of touched on it a little bit about the different channels, but what kind of suggestions do you have for people who are getting started with the kind of group chat, Slacking, Discord, Teamwork Chat, whatever chat platform they choose? What are some like best practices for them to get started? And what are some big mistakes that you see when people first start using them?
Make sure you're creating channels for specific things in your business. So like, just tagging, like what happens in, I don't know how it works in Slack, but like with teamwork, I can just basically tag 3 people and then start chatting them, and it creates its own chat. I have been very guilty of creating those about something specific and then not being able to find it again later. Or just having like, I have a one-on-one, we call the HBICs, Sarah and I. So it's like, we have that chat, and a lot of like our like random communication goes through there. And sometimes I'll be like, what did she say about the payroll thing? And now I got to scroll through and do the search, and it's like a whole thing. Have channels for everything. So we have a payroll channel, we have a social media channel, we have a sales channel, and PR channel. Like, you as specific as you can be, so it's easy to go back and find what it is that you're looking for, because the first time you go looking for something and just this really long chat with one person that you've been back and forth with for 3 days, you're going to get overwhelmed by it.
Yeah. I love that. And, I saw a new community. I've been seeing so many pop-up communities this week, right? For all different types of businesses. And I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't know, maybe it would be good for teams transitioning in, but they actually had numbered channels, right? So it was like 01 - introductions, or it was 01 - community guidelines, 02 - introductions, 03. And then it was like general channels that you would communicate in regularly. So it was like, when you join, here's community guidelines, and here's how this whole thing works and how to manage things. And then, now go into channel number 2 to introduce yourself and scroll through introductions to see everybody else. And then move into, like, if you're on the social media team, go to the social media channel and such and such. I'd also suggest for anybody who's in client service businesses to set up channels. Like for my agency side, we have a channel for each client, right? So our team, the people who are assigned on the different clients, they're in just those channels. And then, like you said, client-specific conversations happen in those channels, so it's easy to keep everything organized. And then any files that get uploaded and all that kind of stuff, it's way easier. So it's definitely a new habit, but it's for people who are used to using email. But it makes a huge difference, and once you get over that initial learning curve, it makes communicating way easier.
That's awesome.
So, all right, we talked through communication. You talked about the training for your new people. They go through this training thing. So now, in today, for people transitioning, the whole company's training on how to work remote, right? So can you give like maybe just an overview or some of the steps that happen in that training that give everybody what they need in order to be successful working remotely?
Yeah. So they're 2 totally different chains of thoughts. Like hiring somebody new and getting them prepped to be a great team member is kind of a different thing. And we can talk about that later when we're talking about hiring remote. But as far as getting a team prepared to be remote, I'm a little less versed in that because it's been remote this whole time. So what I can tell you are things that we do to kind of maintain clarity and communication. We have a Facebook group just internal for the family. The Reho fam is what we call it. And that's like where the rah-rahs happen, the videos, the sharing really cool stuff. That kind of keeps the community like the water cooler kind of scenario where you can still virtually high five each other when it's not just business chats, right? So we try to keep that really light and active to make sure that people still understand that it's a big, happy family, that's super important for morale. I think that it's really important.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And so that's been really helpful. As far as like the day-to-day stuff, really establish what their day needs to look like. So what to expect out of everybody who's remote. From like 9 to 10:30, we know that so-and-so is working on this. By 10:30, they should be moving on to this other thing, because just not knowing what's happening in your entire business has got to be like really, really frustrating. So having very clear guidelines on what everybody works on. When you have check-ins, like we will do between certain team members, US based, we have specific check-ins throughout the day, maybe not like all day, maybe once in the morning, then the next morning or the afternoon. We just kind of know the ebb and flow of our business when a check-in makes sense. So making sure that you're hopping on Zoom for 10, 15 minutes. Hey, what's going on? What do you need from me? And you can save certain things for those conversations as well. Like I said before, everything isn't on fire. So it's kind of like, would you just barge into so-and-so's office to be like, I need this? Like, wait till you have this.
Yes, that's what does happen. I'll tell you, for people in offices, unfortunately, yes, that does happen.
I don't know if that happens. I haven't been in one in so long.
But I think that's a great tip that when you have check-ins, and like for Zeotag, we have scrums 3 times a week. But then 3 times a week is more separate, where we do call each other and ping each other throughout as well. But when you're doing dailies, I do think that's important, where individually keep keep Post-it notes or something so that you don't have to, you're not constantly annoying and micromanaging or micro communicating, but say like, okay, when we talk at 12:30, oh, I need to talk to Shaina about this, and jot it down and keep a list next to your computer. So at your check-in, you have all the things, because, you know, of course you're going to think of 10 things in the morning, and by the afternoon you're like, I thought I had something, but never mind. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Well, we actually use a shared doc for this. So like, it'll be like with Shaina, and then Sarah will just add the stuff she knows she needs to talk to me about. And if I need to add stuff to it too, I'll throw it on there also.
Oh, that's
so
great. That's a great tip.
List. Yeah. We both can see the list. The nice thing about just dealing with it when we sit down to talk about it is that it's not, I know it's going to get dealt with. And if it's on fire for real, she'll get a hold of me, but it's not going to interrupt all of the stuff that I'm doing, because nothing will cause you to be less efficient and effective with your work than just constantly getting interrupted with stuff that may or may not matter that much. So yep. I know if it's on fire, we're going to talk about it, but if it can wait, but it's still important, we're going to talk about it when we have the allotted time.
Yeah. I love that. So, all right. We talked about, you touched on future pacing there. Nice work on hiring, right? Hiring remote people. And I'd love to talk about both sides of this. One, as a business owner, how do we think about hiring remote people now if and when soon, you know, companies get back stable and they start growing? And I think what's going to happen today over the next couple of weeks, months, is companies are going to start operating pretty smoothly remote, and they're going to be like, wait a second, we're paying a lot of money in rent, and everybody can actually do this, right? So I think one of the, you know, bright sides of this situation is on the other side of it is going to be a lot more flexible work arrangements. And so let's talk about both sides of, you're a business owner or manager and you're hiring remote people. What does that look like, and what should you think about? And then let's talk about, flip it on the other side, is there's a lot of people that are going to end up getting laid off, unfortunately, over the next couple of weeks and months. And when you're looking for a remote job, what kind of quality should you look for in the company? So I'd love to hear your opinion on both sides of the coin there.
Those are awesome questions. So we've gotten very good at hiring. What we do a 6-step process. So we don't just hop on a call and hope that it's going to go great, because we don't have the time to do that at how quickly we try to hire, because we actually have people on deck ready to be hired full-time at all times. So just a lot for our workflow. But what we'll do is initially we generally have an Indeed ad. It's, you know, hyper targeted to Manila and certain places in the Philippines that we know we get work, right? We're very, very specific on exactly what the job entails. We actually are having a video made from my video editor in the Philippines, talking about like all the things that you need with your computer, the software you need, the culture, because we lean really hard into culture. Like we do benefit packages for everybody in the Philippines, things like that. So making sure that you're upfront with what that looks like. A lot of the times, if you're going to hire overseas, especially, that's not normal for them. A lot of the times they're anticipating working nights, you know, the gig mentality, which super sucks because they don't know when their next paycheck's going to come, if it is. So being very intentional about what the job's going to look like, as far as 20 hours a week guaranteed, but also it could extend past that. So anyway, we're very intentional with what our job description is, but we ask them, we have like basically gateways that they have to get through before they get to the next stage in the hiring. So in that first one, we have them do the assessment on Indeed. If they get through the assessment, then they get a follow-up, and it's like, hey, we love your assessment. Your resume looks great. We need you to take these steps exactly how they're written, like word for word. We need them to go to our culture page. We have our 6 pillars and, you know, just about us and what we really value. And we need you to pick your top 2. And we want you to make a video and send us the video about what 2 values spoke to you and why. We're like, we want the subject line to say this. I love that. It's like, it gets us a chance to like see this person, like get to know them a little bit before we invest our time on the phone with them or on Zoom. But also it's an exercise in following instructions. If you don't make that subject line exactly what we asked for that subject line to be, we know you're probably not going to be like, there's little leeway. And it's honestly better that I'm not the one who does the hiring now. Sarah does, because she's like, no BS. She's like, if that subject line is 1 letter off, it's no go. I'm more soft, so it's better.
Well, you know, the way that I set it up in the automation is that if that's not like the subject line, like I'll have in Google filtered. So I'm only checking applications that have that subject line, because that's the only ones that come. They're the only ones I'll even see, right? And I've seen other people say, like, in the instructions, it'll say like when we ask your age, put 43. No matter like don't put your real age, put 43, like to check how detailed they are. That's what I thought you were going to go through. But I love when you
I'm
said
not that hardcore.
to go to the culture page, when you started saying that, I thought you were going to say on the culture page there was like a secret code word to use or something. But I think that's so huge to have them go and review the culture and then explain why they have those two things. I think that's really smart. I haven't heard that before. That's a great tip.
Thank you. And it does, it's a double-headed something. What's it? It's double-headed coin, double-edged sword. But in a positive way, I don't know where I was going with that. But what I'm saying is it does two things on both ends. Like for us, it allows us to get to know them a little bit better, see if they follow instructions. Like the correspondence they get right before that is actually a landing page with Sarah on video explaining what needs to happen in the next steps. And then they land there. We get to know them, see if they can follow instructions, see if they have a cool personality, but also they get to see a little bit about us and get excited about our company and how we feel about the people we want to bring on and if they'll be a good culture fit. We basically set expectations straight out of the gates. Like, these are the people we're looking for. This is what we care about. And this is what we want from you. So after that step, we haven't automated our cold-bloodedness. No, filtering them out yet. But Sarah will love that when she watches this. Yeah. That's hilarious. So after that, then she schedules an interview, and then, she'll have the interview with them, basically decide whether or not they're going to be a good fit. But then the biggest problem people ask me is they're like, well, they do work and it's not good, or I don't know if they're going to be great at what they do. Well, we've eliminated that problem completely. They are invited to a 3-day paid training for us, where we reserve the right to say, listen, you're not a great fit. We appreciate your efforts. And they can say, hey, this is what I don't really like this work. It's not what I expected. And it's happened both ways before, but they get 3 days, great pay. We know it's taking time away from whatever else they're doing that's monetizing for them. And then at the end of that 3-day training, we do an assessment. There's always going to be room for improvement. So you need to give people a break. Like, they're not going to 100% know exactly what you do in your business, but we know about where they're easily trainable, right? Did they communicate really well with the training lead? Did they deliver things on time? Did they ask really great questions? Like, we put them in a chat so they're able to communicate in a training chat. And after that's all said and done, then they get either invited to be on the bench or start full-time if we need them full-time right then and there. Or we just say, hey, this isn't going to work. But that whole process has been so instrumental. And by the time somebody gets hired for real full-time, very, very rarely do they not work out well. Yeah.
So can you just do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? What are those 6 steps that we just walked through?
I'm wondering if I said all 6, because now I'm thinking about the number feels funny. Sarah, this is Sarah's process now, so I'm just repeating. But 1 is the Indeed ad. With the assessment, I don't know if that's 2. We're going to say Indeed ad and assessment. We may make that 2 later. Okay. And then it's getting sent the landing page, where they will then go to the culture page. They send us the video with the email subject line that is very good. They have a meeting with Sarah if that gets through that, and then they go through our paid training.
Yeah. So assessment was,
and then they get hired.
Assessment was 2.
6, 7,
so maybe
something. I don't know.
Okay.
6-ish.
Well, whatever. Those are the steps. They're good.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the 6 range.
In that 6, 7, 5-ish range. I
don't know. Yeah. That's awesome. And so for the companies that you see, who do get good hires going, but then maybe their operations start to slack, right? Not in the communication way, but their operations dip because they're not managing properly or they're not leading. How have you become such a good leader? Because with that little of a churn rate on your employees, obviously that means quality leadership and management. And so what have you learned in the last 18 months about being a leader of a remote company?
Great question. So making sure that everybody knows that open communication is huge for us. We put the right people in place as the team leads and as leadership in the Philippines, that they're able to communicate with those people and know that their voices are heard. They also know that they can always communicate with us directly if they need to. And I've had people reach out for all different types of things. Not often, but I know that they know that that's available. We have weekly meetings with the entire team on Zoom. It's really cool to see. You have all these faces piled up. It's pretty dope. I love it. That's been really helpful. I think for morale purposes and stuff, obviously they can bring questions to the table, things like that. But I think truly the biggest way to make sure your operations are going to stay on track is just very, very clear expectations that you can document. Like we put everything in a platform called Flowster, and it's literally step by step of what they do all day, every day. Like they have instructions if they're not clear on it, but it is they know exactly what their process is, and there should be no questions asked about it. And if they are asking questions, then we need to add something to our Flowster and make sure that there aren't any. Because I think what happens is assumptions happen. Like I assume that so-and-so knows what they're supposed to be doing in the afternoon or whatever, or I assume they're working on something that they're not. It's just being very concise, very clear on what the expectations are, what the deliverables are, deadlines, like just leaving as little ambiguous as possible. And ultimately it's, if you have to remember like the game we used to play in elementary school where it's like how to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it's like, grab the knife, but not by the sharp end, by the, break everything down so ridiculously to where it's like obnoxious, but that's where you'll know that there won't be any disconnect, you know?
Yeah. I love that. All right. So we've talked about a lot of stuff: hiring, managing, team morale, leadership, communications, protocols, processes. What's one thing that you wish all managers and leaders knew about running a remote business that we didn't talk about yet?
It is so much easier than you think it's going to be, honestly. And it's something that people are terrified of doing because they're like, I can't be right there with them, you know? And I can understand that. I worked in offices many moon ago, and I get it. Like if you can't physically see the people or watch what they're doing, or, you know, it's so freeing to be able to give responsibility to other people, especially people across the world who English is not their first language. And I'm basically allowing 4 people across the world to run Repurpose House overnight while I sleep. And that was bonkers to me initially. And now it's the most amazing thing because people will step up to the plate and really surprise you. So it's so much easier if you just shift your mentality and know that you are giving them all of the tools to succeed. And sometimes it won't be the right person. That's just is what it is. But if you put the right people in place, you vet them really, really well, people want to succeed. They want to do well, you know, and you just have to give them the opportunity to do that. And I'm a bit of a control freak, so letting go was a little difficult at first, but once you do it, if you know you've put everything in place to allow them to succeed, then it's going to be, I'm interested to see what this is going to look like by the end of the year and how many teams just stay remote and they're just like,
it's going to be super interesting.
Right. I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. So much great information here that's super relevant and valuable, especially in the moment. For anybody watching, I'm sure comment below if this is on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you happen to be watching this. Leave a comment and tag us. I'm sure Shaina will be happy to come in and answer any questions. And
for sure.
Otherwise, where can people find you and get a hold of you and see what you got going on?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, just Shaina Weisinger. I do a lot of like value content, just like trying to educate, especially right now. I'm talking a lot about this kind of stuff. Facebook's the same kind of thing. You can always check out repurposehouse.com. We actually have our whole like process in how you train as a course. So if you really want to implement this in your business, let me know. And I'm happy to give it to you guys for a couple of weeks free because of what we're going through. That's crazy. So
that's awesome.
You know, as much as we can help, the better.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Shaina, so much. Thanks everybody for watching, listening, and we'll catch you guys soon. Be well out there.